Good afternoon, folks. Welcome to the 56th episode of the Ken Matias Sports Podcast. I have 98.5 The Sports Hub, New England Patriots play-by-play announcer Bob Socci. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Ken. Good to see you again.
Nice to see you as well. Appreciate you coming on. Sorry I was running a little late, but like I just asked you and I told you yesterday, we can talk about camp, seeing what you've been seeing at Patriots camp, but first I kind of want to hit on the offseason. I know we probably talked a little bit, but what was your initial thoughts between the hiring of Vrabel, the draft, and obviously rookie minicamp, and then till today? I know it's like 6, 7 months span, but feel free to take the floor. The floor is yours.
Oh, you bet, Ken. And I would say that I think it has been a refreshing change for the Patriots this offseason, going back to the hiring of Mike Vrabel compared to the last couple of seasons, given the unrest and the struggles of the team on the field. And of course, the disappointment for fans, but also the frustration that goes along with that, as expressed by fans really in the aftermath of 2023 and 2024. And as soon as Mike Vrabel was hired, I thought that really set into effect kind of a chain reaction of positive news for the Patriots, at least good vibes around this team. Generally speaking, people were very happy with the choice to bring Vrabel back, of course, Patriots Hall of Famer, but someone with success as an NFL head coach and considered certainly among the candidates out on the market, the one coach who's had experience in the NFL in that position, who really is someone that I think everybody expects can come in here and be the right guy for the job, at least, to get this program pointed in the right direction. And then you go through the free agency period. The Patriots were able to add to their team in a number of ways in a number of areas that they really needed to address. And most significantly, and I think the reviews on the decision to sign Stephon Diggs coming off the torn ACL thus far, look good based on what we've seen in the spring and in training camp. They certainly needed to do something to try to get a top flight receiver, even someone who's up there in years but has still been productive, and even with the risk that comes along with signing someone who's coming off a season-ending injury, as Diggs did. But again, he's looked very good thus far. What we have seen in the spring with his movements out on the field periodically, but especially what we've seen in training camp and building a rapport and chemistry with Drake Maye. And then you take it a step further through the draft. Certainly there are going to be a lot of questions about Will Campbell and his ability to hold down that left tackle spot, and not only hold on to the spot, but to provide enough protection on that side of the line for Drake Maye to build on the progress of last year. We'll get to him, of course, momentarily. But I
Hmm.
think that despite the up and down nature of the early days of padded practices for Will Campbell, for the Patriots, it really was, in retrospect, a no-brainer move. They had to address the tackle position early in the draft, and they did with the best tackle available in the draft. And so I don't think that while you can question maybe a couple of players uh, for the Patriots, maybe they could have chosen this guy or that guy, or they could have tried to package a deal. But it didn't appear as though there was anything enticing enough for them to move off that spot. So they took the guy who was, the best fit at the position they needed to fill the most, and they were able to do that. And I think that beyond that, Travion Henderson, Jared Wilson's progress thus far this summer, looking like a rookie who has a real shot, if not even better than that. Right now, has a job in his sights as a starting offensive lineman. I think you look at those three draft picks early on, and it bodes well for the Patriots going forward.
No, I mean that's great analysis there. Obviously, you've seen the team firsthand, and especially with camp now 8 days in, I believe. But I mean, what's basically stood out with you between rookie minicamp, the guys getting together, they had that month off. Drake May got the group together in what, North Carolina or Florida, whatever it was. They got kind of the receivers, to bond and stuff like that and practice away from the facility, obviously. But what's basically been standing out for you, recently during camp, in other words?
Well, the most significant story is the play of Drake May. And I think you
Hmm.
go back to the spring, new in Josh McDaniels' offense, there were signs that he was certainly facing a learning curve, and a steep learning curve at that, considering how much this offense puts on the quarterback's plate. But what we've seen thus far in the summer is that coming off that 5 week layover between the spring and the summer, even with his wedding, of course.
Hmm. Yeah.
Drake Maye has made remarkable progress and has looked very confident and looked very comfortable. We're seeing mobility on his part, which we expected to see outside of the pocket, but I think we've also seen some real pocket maneuverability to make some plays. One pass in particular to Stephon Diggs a few days ago, where he had a sidestep left. There was a beautiful throw to Kyle Williams as well. But going beyond those flash plays, I just think what we've seen overall, Ken, is a real steady progression for him. And as I mentioned, those two words, confident and comfortable, I go back to those repeatedly with Drake Maye. And right now, that bodes exceptionally well for the Patriots, considering just how difficult this offense can be for a young player to understand. And for Drake in his second season coming off an experience in the West Coast offense a year ago to be where he is. That's a great sign for this team. And there are a number of other players. I mentioned Wilson, the rookie out of Georgia, who's really impressed people, I think, at the left guard position in the last couple of days of practices with pads on. I think there's a number of players that we could talk about individually, but I think collectively, what we've seen is that this is a group that is practicing with energy. The practices are very efficient. I think it's reflective of a coaching staff that has a lot of cohesion itself. They have a real idea of what they're going to do every day and how to accomplish it. Mike Vrabel set the tone immediately with this team. I think there's a lot of respect for him being a former player, but also I think the way he coaches, he connects very well with his players. And yet at the same time, he's a very demanding coach. The players know what's expected of them. And I think just overall, what we've heard from players whether they're veterans, whether they're newcomers to this team, or they're youngsters, there's a pretty consistent message about the collective attitude of this team. And I think those who've been around and gone through those losing seasons are very determined to turn things around and very accepting of the coaching they're getting. And I think those who've come over here from other organizations and those who joined the Patriots as rookies, uh, they're ready to establish a new culture. And that's really important. I think it's one of the things that Vrabel and his staff have set out to do. They're ready to establish a winning culture here and a team first culture among themselves. That's the way it sounds right now. It's the way it
Hmm.
looks right now. Of course, it's always subject to change in the
Yeah.
NFL. But I think you got to feel good about where they're going. There are questions. There are some thin areas on the roster for sure. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done over the next couple of years to really fortify this roster so that it has the depth and talent to compete for Super Bowl championships again. But I think right now, based on what we've seen, they're in a real good place.
No, that you make good points there. And what's been standing out to me, like you said, Drake May, I mean, he seems comfortable, he's confident, he hasn't turned the ball over. They
That's
keep
it.
saying, I know, I keep hearing that. He hasn't turned it over since what camp, whatever it was, or the mini camp, whatever it was. Like he had like four interceptions that day. But anyways, I mean, I just love how committed he is. He almost, I mean, I'm not going to compare him to Tom Brady because that's one end of the spectrum, but it seems like he's just so confident in his second year. Like he's heading into the second year. He quoted, these guys are sick of losing around here. It's like they got to change environment now with Coach Vrabel, Coach McDaniels, the rest of the new staff that came on, this year in 2025. It just seems like it's going to be a good year. And I know it's probably too far to say, Bob, but is there a chance that we can see a repeat of 2021 where they go 10 and 7? I know that's hard to tell on July 31st, but McDaniels was successful with Mac Jones his rookie year, led him to the Pro Bowl, yada yada yada. Kendrick Bourne had a nice season, 800 yards, few touchdowns that year, whatever it was. But do you see a lot of similarities between 2025 and 2021 with McDaniels coming back as the OC?
Yeah, Ken, I think uh, I don't want to get too far ahead of
Yeah,
ourselves.
no, I agree. I
And,
know.
and a lot of people look at the schedule, and certainly for this Patriots team, where they are in their process now, year one under Vrabel, it is a schedule that isn't very treacherous to
Hmm.
navigate, but it's still an NFL schedule where the other teams are going to be looking at the Patriots the same way the Patriots are going to be looking at a lot of those teams on that schedule. So I don't want to, start counting wins and losses. I do think
Hmm.
that there's an opportunity for significant improvement, including in the win column for this team. And if you look at it that way, yeah, maybe there are similarities. I look at it a lot differently. I think when you go back to 2021, that team is still by and large an older team, even
Mm-hmm.
though they had the young quarterback in Mac Jones. And they brought in a lot of free agents. They spent a lot of money that offseason for veteran free agents. It was the offseason that brought in Hunter Henry and Johnny Smith at tight end, Matthew Judon on the defensive side, Jalen Mills et al. But they had some veterans who were, in place from those championship teams for the Patriots, like Devin McCourty, like Matthew Slater, and others who were out there for them. Dante Hightower being another one of those guys. And I think you look at where they are right now. They've turned things over significantly to the point where there are no returning champions, from the dynasty years
Mm-hmm.
for them. Jonathan Jones gone, Dietrich Wise gone, Joe Cardona gone, Jawan Bentley gone, David Andrews gone. So you look at where they are right now. It really is a clean slate in a lot of respects. The guys who are here, I haven't really been through those good times as much. There are some. Hunter Henry would be, a prime example of a guy who had a good year in
Mm-hmm.
2021 for them. And I think with Drake May too, it's a lot different. I think that Drake May at 22 in his second season compared to Matt Jones as a rookie, for Josh McDaniels, I think the canvas is a lot broader right now, and the playbook can be a lot bigger right now, particularly with a guy like Stephon Diggs. I mean, Kendrick Bourne had a nice year in 2021 for sure with Josh McDaniels, but they didn't have a guy like Diggs on the team. So maybe I'm being overly optimistic there, but there are also still some questions about this offensive line that they have to address, and we will find out how Garrett Bradbury is in the next week or so. They've got the game coming up with joint practices against Washington next week, and he's missed a couple of days now of practice after leaving with what appeared to be a lower leg injury. You look at the left guard spot. I think Jared Wilson is a guy right now with a beat on that job, but that's subject to change. And there are a
Mm-hmm.
number of other areas defensively too. We haven't seen the cornerbacks out there of late. And Carlton Davis hasn't practiced yet in training camp, but Christian Gonzalez did, only to have to leave. And though the reports are that the injury in his case is not serious, nonetheless, there's a long way to go to get to the season, and we'll see how he holds up once the season does begin. But with those two guys in place, if they can be out there healthy, I think that is a defense that with Milton Williams, Christian Barmore up front, Harold Landry, okay, Levon Chason
Mm-hmm.
is really good at defensive end and as an edge rusher for them. You look at Keon White and his potential, and again, it's a defense that with Robert Spillane in the middle, I think can be a very good defense by the end of the year. But they need to be healthy because they're again the depth for this team just is non-existent really in a number of spots.
I'm glad you brought up like the offensive line because obviously I've been hearing on 98.5 and whatever else, like media stuff. Will Campbell talking about the arm, stuff like that. I still think he's going to be good. I know the arm length's been a major thing before pre-draft and all this and yada yada yada, but I guess yesterday he gave up a couple of sacks to Kalavion Chason. Sorry if I'm saying that right.
I'm still
So
working on it too.
yeah, yeah, it's it's
Former
something I gotta
Jaguar,
get
number
used
one
to.
pick,
Yeah, yep, yep.
and Raider.
Yep. So he's been in the league for a little bit. So I guess he gave up a couple of sacks to chase on. So what's your thoughts on that? Obviously, they're still going through the motions here. It's camp. You can't really dog the kid because he's a rookie and he's brand new to the system. So what's your initial thoughts on Campbell's performance so far in camp?
Well, he's going to be under a lot of scrutiny, Ken, because he is the number one pick, and
Mm-hmm.
because those arm measurements are what they are, and the wingspan measurement is what it is. And there's a reason why they keep track of those numbers. And there's a reason why it is an issue in the eyes of some, or was an issue around the draft in the eyes of some evaluators. And every time he does give up a pressure or a sack in training camp, or certainly in the games, including next week if he gets a chance to play against Washington. And he will be out there in joint practices. And we'll
Mm-hmm.
see if he's out there for the preseason opener. And again, every time that there is a pass rusher who gets past him, or the run play where he struggles to get off the line. There's going to be a lot of pressure on him to bounce back and the next rep perform better. In either way, even if it is a case where he goes through ups and downs, there's still going to be a lot of questions and criticism in some circles just because of the expectations of being a number one pick and because of those pre-existing conditions that come along with it. I gotta say that I don't know a whole lot about offensive line play as long as I've been in the league, and I try not to, veer out of my lane too much when it comes to that. I'm a
Hmm.
guy who tries to follow the ball for a reason, you know.
Yeah. I like
And,
that.
but the trenches are essential, and really he is such an important piece of this team going into the season. And if they're successful, his ability to hold down that left tackle spot and acquit himself is going to be essential for them. Uh, you talk about what happened in practice, and you really need to dive into it and learn more, hear more from the coaches. They will look at film and really hear
Hmm.
more from Will. But sometimes you may, because of those shorter arms, as an offensive lineman, try to overcompensate. Maybe he has a thought in his mind. He's got to take his pass set quicker or move out to his left. Sometimes it's not on him that when a guy gets past him. Sometimes it might be miscommunication on the offensive line between the center guard and the tackle. I mean, there's a lot that's involved in there, and I think it's easy to watch a play and you look out there and you see somebody who seemingly gets beat, and you say, "Oh, he got torched on that play." Well, that
Yeah.
might not necessarily have been the case based on what the line call was. Maybe it wasn't his mistake. The other part of it is in one-on-one drills, guys are working on different things, and he's somebody who is again a rookie, so his world's got to be spinning. No matter how
Yeah.
composed and confident he is
Hmm.
coming in here out of LSU. But again, all that being said, there are certain things because of that arm length where he's got to be extra good at. Just in what I've learned from talking to people who know a lot more about the offensive line. He's going to have to be really solid in his lower half and strong in his lower half, and he's going to have really really good technique. There's really a smaller margin for error, for someone in his position. Again, given that arm length, that doesn't mean he can't overcome it. That doesn't mean that with his athleticism he can't compensate for it. But I should also note too, like when we talk about how good an athlete he is, he's going up against some of the best athletes in sports who
Hmm.
play at the defensive end spot, those elite edge
Absolutely.
rushers. And we'll see week one, one of the best in the league in Max Crosby.
I know. Geez, what a tough test right out the rip. Home opener, Max Crosby and the Raiders and Pete Carroll. Whew. But sticking with the O line, this might be like a side question, but has the former offensive line coach and legend Dante Scarnecchia, has he been around in camp? Can you
No, he hasn't done it. I haven't
no?
seen Dante at camp. He may be, he may be popping in, or maybe he was at a practice. I didn't
Hmm.
see him. Dante does do a lot of work still locally with a number of players, high school
Yeah.
players, college players. And he's still very much involved in the game, even though he's retired from the Patriots. But they have three offensive line coaches, and Doug Marrone is
Yeah,
a
Doug
very,
Marone.
very experienced coach in the NFL. He's been a head coach.
Yeah.
He's a head coach who came this close to getting to the Super Bowl by beating the Patriots in Foxborough when he was with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's been a head coach who, with the Buffalo Bills, had them on an upward track before he walked away from that job
Hmm.
after a few years. So I think that, in his case too, he's been with Sean Payton in New Orleans. He's been around good coaches in the NFL. He's had a number of roles, and I think there's a lot of confidence in him as the offensive line coach and as well with a couple of assistants on the offensive line. They're getting quality coaching, no doubt about that.
No, absolutely. And how obviously heavily involved is what I'm trying to say. Has Vrabel been with the offensive line, or he's just been all over the field, offense, defense, special teams? He probably has his hand in the cookie jar because he's the top guy. So I was curious how heavily involved he's been with his coaches and his players on all sides of the ball.
Well, he's very active, and he's
Hmm.
active in a number of positions. You'll see him out there grab a guy and demonstrate a technique, or when they're doing a drill, demonstrate maybe the precise way that the drill needs to be done. He certainly obviously has an expertise defensively,
Hmm.
having primarily been a defensive player, a linebacker for the Patriots and the Chiefs. Beyond that, a defensive coordinator. He's coached the defensive line. He's coached other positions on the defense during his time as an assistant at Ohio State and with the Houston Texans. But he's also a guy who's been an exceptional special teams player. In his career and has caught a lot of touchdown passes.
Yeah, that's true. Very
There's
important
been
ones.
there's never been anybody in the game who's made the most of his catches than Mike Vrabel. You look at his career in the regular season and postseason, every pass thrown his way he's caught, and every one of them has been a touchdown. So he's a guy's just well versed in the game in all facets of it. But I think he's also a head coach who allows his assistant coaches to coach.
Hmm.
And what we've seen, we've gotten some glimpses if you've watched the Forged in
A
Foxborough
little
series
bit. I haven't caught up.
on Patriots.com. You do see some glimpses and you hear, some audio from coaches' meetings. And granted, it's all edited, it's all curated,
Yeah.
but you still get a sense, and I think we see it more importantly. It's reflected. I mentioned earlier the efficiency and the energy of the drills. You get that sense when you watch this team out on the practice field. I mean, those coaches are on the same page. A lot of the defensive coaches have been with Mike in the past, but even the coaches when you look at the offensive side of the ball, where there's more guys that have come from outside of the Vrabel tree, so to speak. I think what we've seen has been a lot of evidence of a group that's really in sync right now and was ready to go to hit the ground running in training camp and has continued to look that way. So I think overall the philosophy is pretty consistent, if not very consistent with the staff across the board. And like I said, Mike Vrabel's out there. He's hands on. He's involved. He puts on what we call penny,
Penny.
those
Yep.
mesh
Yep. Yep.
vests as a scout team player sometimes on defense, and he will get out. He will get out there and get involved in various areas. But at the same time, he's leaving Josh McDaniels the offense to coordinate. He's leaving
Basically
Terrell
giving them the
Williams
keys. Here
the
you go.
defense to coordinate. And Jeremy Springer and Tom Quinn are running special teams, and Mike Vrabel's in charge of it all.
That's amazing. I love seeing Coach Raves just getting out there, getting gritty with his guys. It's like basically growing up, having coaches basically playing with you out there. Somebody's at third base, whatever it is, like just trying to show kids. I just like seeing that because I know you've been around more NFL teams and locker rooms than I have, but
Not
are a
many.
lot of coaches like that in college or the pros or probably high school? Obviously, they're one on one, but I don't hear many things like Coach Vrabes does that he's lining up with his guys, throwing penny on, acting like he's like 25, 30 years old back in the league. I mean, how often do you see that?
Well, number one, you don't see a lot of head coaches in the league. And I'm just talking off the top of my head with NFL playing experience.
That's a good point too.
And also, the youth of Mike Vrabel and his
Hmm.
conditioning is a part of that as well. Now, Bill Belichick, when it comes to coaching individual players and position groups, I mean, Bill Belichick, when he was the head coach, was very
He'd
much
set
a
up too.
hands-on coach
Hmm.
during practices. Now, he didn't get out there necessarily
Yeah.
in run scout team reps, but he was pulling guys aside in special teams drills and demonstrating things. You take, a undrafted free agent receiver and show him a few things.
Hmm.
And I can't speak for other coaches and other teams because I've only been in the Patriots training camp,
Yeah.
and I've watched joint practices, but
Yeah,
get a
that's
full glimpse of that. I think there are coaches though who've been hands on, maybe not to the extent of Mike, but you think about a guy like Jim Harbaugh. I mean,
hmm.
he's out
Yeah,
there
that's
playing
true.
catch.
Yeah.
He's a bit older than Mike as
Yeah.
well. But I think it's been a positive thing thus far. Now, you may be a situation too, and I'm not saying that's going to be the case here, but there might be sometimes situations where a coach is out there on the field and players, you you would rather he stay on the sidelines. But it's a long way
Mm.
from, the days when coaches uh, stereotypically would watch from the tall tower. You'd see the old films of college coaches
Hmm.
or NFL coaches going back years where they'd stand on the tower and watch the practice unfold. No, I mean, these guys are in the thick of it.
No, I love that. And obviously sticking, the offensive side of the ball, moving from the line to the receivers. One thing that's been standing out to the media or I'm seeing all over Twitter is the hype about Kyle Williams. I mean, how great has he looked? And it seems like he's like an NFL ready receiver. I know it's only camp, the preseason hasn't started yet. but it seems like he's fitting in right with the Diggs and Pop Douglas and Bourne's. Like,
Yeah.
what have you seen firsthand with him
Well,
being
I'm
at
not.
camp?
Yeah, I'm not aware.
I'm not
I
gonna
think
say he's been like flashy the best receiver, but
no.
apparently it's been like a lot of buzz from what I'm seeing, or maybe I'm misunderstanding what people are saying.
I think there's been, look, I think there's a lot of people that are very high on his
Oh,
potential, and
okay.
I think that there's been buzz from people nationally
Mm-hmm.
who really like him. And I'm not saying he's had a bad camp, but I would say that right now he's, somebody who's not in the top three, maybe
Okay.
not the top four, with Mac Hollins coming back today as we record
Yep.
this, and being a guy that right now figures to be a pretty prominent part of the offense for Josh McDaniels. So you look at Diggs. You look at Hollins, two veterans they brought in through free agency. And Kayshon Boutte has been very consistent, and he's played well, I think, and has put himself in a good
Mm-hmm.
position. And then there's Pop Douglas. So there's four guys right there. Now Kyle Williams has made some plays, but he's also had some drops. He's had at times, the inability yet, and it's a hard thing to do to get on that same page for back shoulder throws, quarterback to wide receiver, the timing, reading the defense, the defender the same way. So those things that particular play is one that really you need a lot of repetition and time. But
Absolutely.
those are just a couple of areas that you look at the back shoulder throws, you look at maybe some of the inconsistencies with his hands thus far when they get into joint practices, when they go up against Washington and Minnesota defensive backs, and maybe they get a little handsy. We'll see how he is. He came out of college with speed and the ability to get off the line of scrimmage, a really effective player getting into his route early and getting himself open. Well, it's a different league. It's a huge jump. We'll see how he does. But I would say right now, I think people feel good about him and his prospects. I think don't misunderstand what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think at the same time, some of what I've heard on the national level
Oh, maybe it's the
has been
national.
unfair and unrealistic in terms of putting, any kind of expectations on Kyle Williams, like anything along the lines of could be the Patriots' top receiver this year, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe the best rookie receiver in the league this year. He might be, but I think right now there's still ways to go. I think he shows that he can be a very good player in this league, and I think that with his speed, there's great potential there. But as I said, Ken, there are at least four receivers that I can think of, and then you have to think about Kendrick Bourne as well,
Yep.
as guys in that room who right now may very well be ahead of Kyle Williams.
No, that's a good point. Maybe I'm just getting into the national media hype of this guy's gonna be something, but I want him to prove
He
to,
might be, yeah.
yeah, I mean,
True.
you
We hope he
never know.
is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Trust me, I'd love to see rookie receivers just be successful in the NFL if it's us or another team. But
The other part of it too, Ken, is again going back to I mentioned Josh McDaniels' offense,
mhm.
Drake Maye. When you look at the wide receiver position over the course of the history of the McDaniels O'Brien offense in New
Yep.
England, Charlie Wise. I mean, typically it takes a longer time for your wide receivers to grasp the offense. That's, I think, one of the things that's been so impressive to me about this receiving group is that they've done as well as they have
Mhm.
in this offense thus far. Speaking of Booty and Douglas, among those top handful that I mentioned earlier, and even Kyle Williams, what he's done.
I know you mentioned the four receivers, Booty, all them. What's your thoughts on Polk and Baker? I mean, I know Polk just recently came back to practice, I should say, or camp, and then Baker, I haven't been hearing too much buzz about. So, what's your thoughts on those two guys from last year's draft class?
Yeah, I think they're in a difficult spot. I mean, Polk,
Mm-hmm.
I will say this. I think since he came back out on the field after missing the first week or the better part of the first week, certainly if you look at the calendar week, he missed, the first few
Mm-hmm.
days of training camp, and now into this week when they put the pads on, he's been out there. He's looked feisty. I think he's looked competitive, but based on where he started and what's in front of him, I do think he's got a tough road ahead of him to try to make this team. He's got to have value on special teams, and I think he's trying to do that. I think he's got a good attitude. If he continues to do what he did the first couple of days of padded practices, he may play himself into good stead and have a real role on this team, or at least
Mm-hmm.
an opportunity, a really solid opportunity to be on the roster on September 7th when they take on Las Vegas. Javon Baker is a player that, he is an enigma in some respects. He's I think in a real tough spot too, like Polk, based on where he has started and who's in front of him. Yeah, I'll give you an example with him when I talk about that enigmatic uh, description, adjective.
Mm-hmm.
He made a catch in practice a few days ago as we record, and it was a terrific play. It was a throw where he had to go up and high point catch it over the defensive back, and it was a terrific play. But then I believe on his next repetition, Josh Dobbs had to call a timeout, and it appeared as though it was a goal line play or a red zone play. It appeared as though he was having a conversation with Baker, perhaps being lined up incorrectly or maybe confused before the snap. You can't afford those kind of hiccups.
Especially in a
Again,
game
when
situation, like real
yeah,
life. Yeah.
absolutely. When you're trying, they're going to happen. But the
Mm-hmm.
problem is when you're far down on the line, and now you've got to start passing in these other guys, and you got to throw Efton Chisholm in there. He's getting a little more reps now with the twos and not necessarily the ones, but moving up the depth chart a little bit as a wide receiver. And Baker is a guy that came into the league with some baggage, and I don't know that in the Patriots. Uh, Point of view right now with this administration. Speaking of Vrabel, Ryan Cowden, who's a front
Mm-hmm.
office exec now, who came over with Mike or had been in Tennessee with Mike up until a couple of years ago, and then was with the Giants last year. Baker was not a player they drafted, so they have nothing invested in him in terms of draft cap. Their reputations as NFL evaluators. And so for him, he really does have his work cut out for him. I won't say that he's not going to make the team,
Mm-hmm.
but I
It's
would be
too early.
surprised where we are right now based on where he is if he is on the team come opening day.
It just seems like it's a crowded receiver room. I mean, there's veterans, there's guys trying to make the team, there's guys, returning, stuff like that. I just feel like it's just so crowded to make five or six guys just be every week 1 to week 18, 1 to 6, 1 to 5 receivers. I mean, it just depends what they want to do. Because the most you
Oh,
can carry is what, 6 or 7, Bob, on the team?
oh yeah, it varies. When you look at other positions, how it balances out who plays special teams, who
Yeah,
doesn't.
that's true.
Realistically speaking, yeah, I mean, six wide receivers isn't even that's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of again it goes down to it comes down to a lot of the details. And if you're a player that doesn't start out training camp with a roster spot guaranteed, a big money free agent, a first or second round draft pick, a player that has proven himself in the league, but might be coming off an injury or is an older player, and you're kind of working things out, and you're on a slow play it type of plan. Well, you've got to be better every day. Like every
Mm-hmm.
day, there's got to be improvement shown, and that comes in many ways. It's not just making a catch that elicits oohs and ahs from fans. It means in the spring, speaking of Javon Baker, when the coach has to tell you, as what happened in one spring practice, to get to the huddle because you ran down the field, made a catch, and you were jawing with players on the sideline and not hurrying back to get into the huddle. Well, okay, now right there, okay, now from that point on, like you've got to be even extra sharp in terms of
Absolutely.
your focus and your details, and so you have a lot to overcome to begin with, and with every step back, every setback, again, you don't nobody expects you to be perfect, but you're not making progress, and in Baker's case, again, he's got a long way to go. I mean, it's the NFL. I mean, you know this. I mean, the difference between players who are able to stick in the league and those who don't often is consistency. Can you
Mm-hmm.
be a guy who's reliable? Can they consistently count on you to be a consistently reliable player? And that means not only all the physical skills that it takes to play in this league, but you better know the game plan. You better know the playbook. You better take care of yourself. You better show up in the training room on time for medical treatments. You better be in the weight room doing everything that they're asking of you and more. You better be out there on the field putting in extra time, catching balls off the jugs machines, as well as working with the other, other players, maybe the third string quarterback to get some extra work in. Again, when you're down on the depth chart, you got to do a lot of different things to set yourself apart to get noticed by the coaches, and you don't want to be noticed for the wrong reasons.
No, absolutely. And I know we're short on time. I wanted to hit on the defense, but unfortunately we're just short on time here. But Bob, I appreciate it so much you making this work, and thank you for coming on again. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, sir.
Well, my pleasure, Ken. And I just could give a quick comment on the defense. I think, again, starting defense, there's a lot of
Hmm.
potential there for this defense to be a lot more disruptive. I think they're going to try to play with an attacking style up front, especially given the explosiveness of Milton Williams, Christian Barmore, assuming he's healthy out on the field this year, Harold Landry, Chase on, and we talked a little bit about Keon White.
Hmm.
Robert Spillane is definitely the leader of that defense right now in terms of the communication as a linebacker. So much of it, though, hinges on whether Gonzalez can be out there along with Carlton Davis and be the kind of cornerbacks the Patriots hope they and expect they will be. The safety position, I think you're going to have guys that are, in a lot of ways, very similar to one another, almost redundant. Peppers, Duggar, very physical, hard-hitting safeties, guys who really have been more accustomed to playing in the box than showing off range for the
Hmm.
Patriots. So, but overall, I think this will be a defense that plays with a lot of aggressiveness and intensity and a lot of physicality. Speed again at the safety spot. No real true free safety right now in the mold of like a Devin McCourty. But if they can keep the key players at cornerback on the field and have those guys up front do what they think they can do, this defense will be a good defense. It will cause some problems around the league.
I'm hoping so. And I'm hoping both sides of the ball and leads into success for all around the fan base and you guys seeing it firsthand. But like I said, Bob, thank you so much again. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Ken. Thank you.